Hi, I'm Carol Carini from Billabong Marketing, and today I'm talking with John Farver from Farver Law Firm in Bellevue, Washington. Today John will be explaining what the means test is and how it affects bankruptcy. So hi John, how are you doing?
Fine, Carol. How are you today?
Good. So John, what is the means test and how does it really work?
Well, Carol, in 2006, the Congress changed the bankruptcy code to make it a little more difficult for people to file a Chapter 7. One of the things they added was something called the means test, which was used to determine whether the debtor made enough money to pay some of its debts back, 25% of its debt, unsecured debt over 5 years. And if that's possible, then they cannot file a Chapter 7. They have to file a Chapter 13. A little later on, I'm going to talk about, in this video, I'm going to talk about a Chapter 13 and good reasons for filing it. But it means failing the means test is not one of them. Failing the means test will stop you from filing a Chapter 7, but in most cases, it's pretty hard to fail the means test. Means test, as we discussed before, the first question on the means test is your income, annual income, greater than the median annual income for a family of your size in your community? And that amount of money is set by the IRS, and they've done the statistics to figure out what is the median income in your community for a family your size. It changes 2 or 3 times a year, so you sort of have to keep up on what the amount is. But as I say, your annual income is only the first question on a rather long test. The test itself has more than 40 questions on it. If you pass on the first question, you're done with the test. You can stop right there. If your median income for the last 6 months times 2 to make it an annual income is less than the median income for a family of your size in your community, you've passed the means test and you don't have to go any further. And to give an example, in Washington State recently, the median income for a single person in Washington State is about $53,000 a year. If you find yourself in deep financial trouble, but you happen to be making $60,000 or $70,000 a year, you fail the first test or the first question of the means test, which, unless you are pretty savvy, would be enough for you to say, "Geez, I can't file a Chapter 7." We'll discuss later on what you can do if you fail the total means test. But if you failed the first question, all that means is you go to question 2. And question 2 will allow you to deduct an amount from your gross annual income to try and reduce it below the median. And question 1 or question 2 would be, do you live someplace? Yes, I do. I have an apartment or I have a house. I'm renting or I'm buying. But the IRS, again, has figured out statistically what the average cost or average amount spent by a single person in Washington State on housing costs. That's for your just for the upkeep and other costs of living. So the next question is deduct that from your gross income already determined. And if that brings it below the median income, then you get to stop taking the test then. If it still is, if after subtracting it off you're still above the median income, then you get to go on to question 3 and question 4 all the way up to question 40. And you keep taking the test until you use every possible exemption that the bankruptcy court allows. Some of those exemptions are amounts already determined by the IRS to be the average cost of whatever that question is, such as health care, cost of transportation, et cetera, et cetera. Several of those answers to those questions, though, are the exact amount that you spent, such as how much you paid in taxes the year before, or how much it costs you for your house payment or your car payment. Those are actual amounts that get to be deducted off. And as I say, you continue taking the test until either you've dropped below the median income in your community, or you've gotten to the end of the test and you realize that no matter what happens after taking all of the exemptions that you're allowed to by the statute, you still make too much money. That's where you have some decisions to make. The first decision, easiest decision is, well, I can probably file a Chapter 13. Now, there are some restrictions to filing a 13. You can't have a substantial amount or way too much unsecured debt or secured debt. The amounts are extremely high for a normal consumer. So chances are, yes, as a consumer, you will be able to file a Chapter 13. Other things you can do if you fail the means test is look again at your last 6 months' income. Some people have lost their job in the last 3 months, so they're counting 3 months of fairly high income with 3 months of zero income, multiplying that by 2. That still may be above the median. So one of the things you may want to consider is waiting 2 or 3 months. And yes, I know it'll be 2 or 3 months that you're not making very much money, and creditors will be chasing you, but if you know that down the road you're going to be filing the Chapter 7 anyway, you can continue on and wait for your annual income, your 6 months times 2, ends up being below that median income. You can, decide to try and work out your debts in another way. Just any of the methods for settling your debts outside of bankruptcy will work at this point too. But the final solution is you can file a Chapter 13. Now, as we discussed before, Chapter 13 is a pretty onerous thing if you're just trying to discharge unsecured debt, primarily because the court will expect you to propose a plan that shows all of the income you receive in a month minus all of the reasonable expenses you pay each month to live, and then they take whatever's left over. And if you're in a Chapter 13 because you failed the means test, the Chapter 13 plan has to last 5 years. So for 5 years, all of your extra income that you don't spend just to live goes to the bankruptcy court to fund your plan for 5 years. During that 5 years, so we discussed before, your debt-to-income ratio is 100%.
That's a long time. 5 years is a long time, but I guess, and I remember you saying in a previous interview that, this Chapter 13, you have to be earning more than $53,000 and up, and there's really no limit to what you're earning. It's really a ratio between what your debt is. Is that correct?
Yes, and not so much your debt. It's your cost of living, because you're not going to be making any of your debt payments, so you don't get to include those, taking off your income. So you'll take your income, and you'll get to remove from your net income how much you pay for rent or your house payment if you're staying in your house, how much it costs for food, how much it costs for gas, how much it costs for utilities, how much you spend every month for charity, how much you'll be allowed a little bit for savings. You'll be allowed a little bit for entertainment. But there are several categories of monthly costs that you'll be able to reduce, or not reduce, but you'll be able to subtract from your net income, leaving a balance. And no matter what that balance is, I mean, if you're making a substantial amount of money, then that balance is probably going to be pretty substantial. And that will be an amount that the Chapter 13 will send to your creditors on a pro rata basis, on a monthly basis, and they will be forced by the code to accept whatever the chapter trustee and or Chapter 13 trustee and your plan have determined. This is the amount you're going to pay every month, which will allow you, as I say, very little money. You won't be able to get any credit because you won't have any disposable income, so to speak. And so, yes, I mean, if you have a substantial amount of debt and you're making a substantial amount of money, then the Congress has determined that you're obligated to pay back some of your debt, and that's how you can do it through a Chapter 13. If during the Chapter 13 plan your income gets reduced substantially, then you can always move to convert it to a 7, or you can move for what's called an hardship discharge into Chapter 13, which basically ends your Chapter 13 at that point, discharges all your debt.
Can you move from, like I think you were just saying, can you move from one chapter to another, depending on what your circumstances are?
You can. Normally, you can move from a Chapter 7, or from a Chapter 13 to a 7. But as I say, you can also get a hardship discharge from Chapter 13, which treats it exactly like a 7 at that point. If you're once you're in a Chapter 7, though, the reasons for filing Chapter 13 are much slimmer, so you may or may not convert in that direction. Another thing, what's often done too is some debts, and we'll discuss this in a future video, are not dischargeable in bankruptcy. You still have to pay them whether you file bankruptcy or not in Chapter 7. Some of those debts are dischargeable in a Chapter 13, and also what you can do is file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy and discharge all of your dischargeable debts, and then enter into a Chapter 13 immediately thereafter to set up a payment plan to get rid of all the non-dischargeable debts. And I want to very briefly talk about good reasons to file a Chapter 13. Failing the means test is a reason. It's not, in my opinion, a good reason. But if you want to save your house and you're behind on payments, you can file a 13 and stop any foreclosure, and also allow you to catch up on your payments to the exclusion of your unsecured creditors until those payments are caught up, and then you can continue on making your payments. During your plan, you'll be required to continue to make the payments on your regular mortgage, but you will be able to stop making the payments on your unsecured debt up to the limit of your income, of course. The same thing with cars. And one of the best things right now, because of the housing crisis, is that if your house is worth fair market value of your house is less than your first mortgage, and you have a second mortgage, so your second mortgage has no equity, there's no equity in the house at all to cover the second mortgage, in a Chapter 13 you can treat that second mortgage as an unsecured debt, and it can also be discharged in your Chapter 13. Thus you end up with only your first mortgage on your house. That's one of the good reasons for filing a Chapter 13. But in all, and the reason I went into such great detail on the means test is because we've discussed before that yes, it is possible to do it bankruptcy without using an attorney, but unless you know, or unless you yourself are very familiar with the means test, chances are a lot of people will take that first question and say, no, I don't qualify at the end, I can't file bankruptcy. When in fact a good attorney can walk you through or walk your case through every single question until you have passed it. And it's surprising, quite frankly, that people with relatively high incomes can still qualify for Chapter 7 if they can pass the means test. And sometimes it takes quite a bit of work to make that happen.
It seems like there's a lot involved with bankruptcy, but and I've said this before, just from knowing you and talking to you over the long period that we've known each other, that you know, you can go and do it yourself, but really it's probably not a good idea in the long run. Yes, people can do a lot of things themselves, but yes, in the long run, hiring a professional to assist you is certainly well worth the expense. Absolutely. Well, thank you, John. Appreciate your time today. You're welcome. And everyone, if you would like to contact John Farver and get a free consultation, you can go to farverlaw.com/free, or just go to his website, farverlaw.com, and also call him on the phone number on the screen right now. So thanks everyone for joining us, and John, we'll see you next time on the next video. See you, everyone. I look forward to it. Bye. Bye.